Grant looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're too old to manage your own money now, Thunderfer." I didn't shout, I smiled, sipping my coffee like he hadn't just signed his own downfall. That day, I stopped being their victim and became their lesson. The real story had only begun. My name is Eunice Caldwin. I'm 69 years old, born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, and still living in the same Creole-style house my late husband Thomas and I rebuilt after that hurricane back in '89. Folks call it charming now, but back then it was just work and prayer. Thomas was steady. No flowers, no poems, but he showed love through bills paid on time and groceries in the fridge. I tell people that's what marriage really is, showing up even when you're tired. When he passed in March, people started talking to me like I'd lost my mind along with my husband. "You just rest now. Don't you worry about all that paperwork. Miss Eunice." Little words meant to comfort, but they itched. Grant Penmar, my son-in-law, started showing up more after the funeral. He's one of those men who speaks softly but looks at you like he's already done the math on your life. He offered to help with bills, said he'd make sure things stayed organized. I wanted to believe him. He married my daughter Laurel, and family's supposed to mean trust. But lately, I'd noticed the way he walked around my home, like he was taking mental inventory. That afternoon, the house was quiet except for the fan ticking overhead. I went into my bedroom and opened the closet, sliding aside a shoebox to reach the small steel safe Thomas and I had kept for more than 3 decades. My knees didn't like it, but my hands remembered the rhythm. Left 32, right 5, back to 17. I didn't open it often, sometimes just to feel close to him, to see the watch he wore on his last day at the rail yard, or that tiny gold chain we bought when we had nothing but hope. When the latch gave way, I expected that faint smell of metal and paper. Instead, I saw emptiness. The shelf was bare, just a thin coat of dust where his watch should have been. I touched the spot, and my chest turned cold. No scream, no panic, just a quiet that felt like insult. I whispered. "Somebody's been in my marriage," I called out, calm but sharp. "Grant?" He appeared in the doorway like he owned the air. "Yes, Miss Eunice?" That tone, smooth, practiced. "My safe is empty." He smiled the way people do when they think they can talk you out of the truth. "Right, we handled that already." "Who's we?" "Me and Laurel. We donated everything." "You're too old for that stuff anyway." I watched him lean on my doorframe like I was a child. That old jewelry, those papers. It was just clutter. Laurel said you never wear any of it. Figured we'd put it to better use. I didn't raise my voice. "You figured wrong." He shrugged. "It's for charity. Miss Eunice, you should be proud. In our culture, you don't toss out what's sacred. That safe held proof of a life built, wages, vows, history, and here he was calling it junk." I stood slowly, letting the weight shift off my knees but not off my pride. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I don't need it, but you are going to need a lawyer." He blinked, color draining from his face. "Now, there's no need for—" I cut him off. "You emptied a widow's safe without her consent. That's theft, not kindness." He swallowed hard. The room was still, the kind of still that makes dust seem loud. After he left, pretending calm. I sat on my bed and stared at the open closet. My phone was in my hand, my heartbeat steady like a drum. People think age makes you fragile, but it teaches you timing. I whispered to myself, "They think I don't remember. They think I'll forget. Baby, watch this." Grant didn't leave after the safe. He drifted into my kitchen like it was his office, poured himself sweet tea, and leaned on the counter as if the air belonged to him. "Miss Eunice, he said, lowering his voice the way folks do when they're talking to a child. We talked about this last week. You said we could clear that old stuff out. You said it was fine. I looked right at him. No, I didn't. He smiled the way liars do when they think they're clever. You told us you didn't want to stress about it anymore. You said you don't even remember where half that paperwork came from. I let him talk. My mama taught me long ago, never interrupt a fool when he's handing you proof. Every sentence felt rehearsed. Each phrase was planting a seed. Forgetful, confused, unfit. I knew the pattern. This wasn't about jewelry. This was a setup, slow and patient, dressed in kindness. When Laurel walked in, her arms were folded, her face tight. She didn't ask how I was. She stood beside her husband. That told me everything. "Mama, why are you making this a big deal?" she said. My safe was emptied, I replied, steady as Sunday. She sighed. "You just don't remember giving us permission. You keep getting overwhelmed with all these bills. We're just trying to help." I wanted to laugh. Overwhelmed? I'd balance checkbooks through recessions. I pay every bill by hand. They weren't trying to help, they were trying to erase. And that's how it starts for women my age. Not with shouting, but with whispers. "You've been slipping, haven't you?" Grant's voice softened. "Laurel and I've been talking. You can't keep living here alone. This house is too big. You'll fall. We found a nice place in Jacksonville, just for a while." That phrase, "just for a while," is Southern code for "you're not coming back." I asked, "You already toured it?" He nodded. "It'll be easier for everyone." That's when I smiled, because now I knew the truth. They'd planned this long before that safe turned empty. While they kept talking, I set my phone on the table, screen down, thumb pressing record. "You said we could manage your accounts," Grant said. "You gave us that debit card. You asked us to step in. So you're saying," I repeated, clear and slow, "that I gave you permission to move me to Jacksonville and clear out my safe?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, proud of his script. "That's exactly what I needed you to say." They didn't hear the click when I stopped recording, but I felt it like armor. That wasn't fear anymore. That was evidence. When they finally left, the house went quiet again. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the old metal file box under the quilts. I sorted every page: Thomas's pension, the savings accounts, insurance letters. Everything was in order until I found the first wrong mark, my signature, but not my hand. The curve on the C was too round. Thomas used to tease me about that loop. Now it was gone. I sat there, staring at it, feeling something colder than grief. This wasn't family confusion. This was forgery. I whispered. This stopped being a family problem the minute they touched my name. I called Howard Lendricks, Thomas's friend, a lawyer older than sin but sharp as a blade. "Howard," I said, "I need your ear and your silence." He didn't hesitate. "Talk to me. Eunice." I told him everything. He didn't say, "Are you sure?" He said, "Bring me copies. Don't confront them again tonight. Don't sign a damn thing." When I hung up, I felt steadier than I had all week. Somebody believed me. Somebody still saw me as competent. I spread the papers on my bed, saw one authorization transfer giving Grant Penmar control of my retirement funds, with Laurel's signature as witness. My voice broke into a whisper, not weak but steel. When your own child signs you away, you stop being a mother and start being a survivor. I walked from my bedroom to the dining room with the paper in my hand. I didn't bother hiding it. I wanted them to see it. Sometimes you have to let the snake know you're holding the shovel. The dining room was dim. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint smell of fried okra left from lunch. I said, "Both of y'all, sit down." Not asked. Said. That tone alone changed the air. They glanced at each other but obeyed, like children caught whispering behind the teacher's back. I laid the document flat on the table, the same table where we'd shared every Sunday meal for years. "You see this?" I asked, tapping the page with one finger. "This is my name, except it's not." My phone was already recording from the buffet cabinet, hidden inside a glass dish. My pulse didn't race this time. I felt steady, like a storm that had already decided where to land. Grant smirked, crossing his arms. "Miss Eunice, you're getting yourself worked up again. We already discussed this." I leaned forward. "Did I sign this?" He blinked. "You said..." "Did I sign it?" I repeated, voice flat as a courtroom wall. Laurel cut in. "Mama, we talked about this. You said you were tired of dealing with numbers." I turned to her. "Baby, you've seen my signature your whole life. Look at that seat. Does that look like mine?" For the first time, she hesitated. That silence said everything. The lie didn't fit as neatly anymore. Grant shifted defensive, pretending he didn't notice his wife's doubt. "This is a felony," I said, leaning back. He laughed too loud. "Now you're being dramatic." "No," I replied, calm as scripture. "This is forgery, elder exploitation, theft. You want me to keep naming crimes?" Laurel's eyes darted between us, confusion breaking through her loyalty. She whispered, "Grant, did you actually sign her name?" His mask cracked. "You told me to handle it. You said she wouldn't understand anyway." That right there was my proof. He didn't call me your mama. He called me she, like I was already gone. I didn't speak. Silence does more damage than shouting ever could. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. "You're gonna call the cops on family?" He spat. I met his eyes. "Family doesn't steal from family. You stopped being mine when you signed my name." The room went quiet enough to hear the ceiling fan creak. Then I said, slow and deliberate, "Here's what's going to happen. You will not touch one more dollar, one more paper, one more thing that belongs to me. Laurel, if you love that man more than you love the truth, go with him. But if either of you signs my name again, the next signature will be on a police report." Grant puffed his chest, trying to raise his voice, but I didn't flinch. I tilted my head and smiled. "Go ahead. Make some noise. I'd love for the neighbors to witness this part." Laurel sat back, tears starting to form. "Mama," she whispered. But I didn't let her finish. "Tomorrow night," I said, "when your people come over for Thanksgiving, I'm going to ask him the same question in front of everyone, on camera." The power shifted right then. It wasn't his house anymore. It was mine again. Thanksgiving evening, my own dining room didn't feel like mine anymore. The table was covered in dishes I hadn't seasoned, and folding chairs lined the walls like someone had rented my house for a church potluck. Grant's people filled the space. His mother, Miranda Coy, laughing loudest, calling out, "Put the greens over here. Sugar." She moved like she owned the place, rearranging plates and giving orders while I stood at the doorway, invisible in my own home. The smell of ham and sweet potatoes didn't comfort me this year. It made my stomach twist. I said nothing yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go, pretending this house didn't have my name on the deed. The TV in the living room buzzed with football commentary. Laughter rose and fell like a storm wind. I caught pieces of conversation, Miranda telling one of her church friends. Bless her heart. She just can't live alone no more. Laurel and Grant been doing everything for her, keeping her bills straight, making sure she doesn't get scammed. I clenched my hands behind my back. The disrespect didn't come as surprise. It came rehearsed. Grant's voice followed, smooth and fake sincere. Yeah, we had to step in, take some things out before she lost them. We just want her safe. You know how it is with seniors. They were rewriting theft into charity right in front of strangers. I looked at Laurel, my own daughter, and she said nothing. Her silence confirmed the script. They wanted to paint me senile, helpless. I waited, steady, because I'd learned something. You don't interrupt a liar. You let him build the stage he's going to hang himself on. When I finally stepped into the room, Forks froze mid-air. "Miranda, sweetheart," I said, soft but sharp. "You talking about me like I'm not standing right here?" She blinked fast, that fake church lady smile sliding into place. "Oh, Miss Eunice, we were just saying how much these two do for you. They've been worried sick. You know how you've been lately." I smiled back, slow as honey. "How I've been lately," I said, setting my phone on the table, "is documenting everything." Then I hit play. Grant's voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. "You said we could clear that old stuff out. You don't remember, Miss Eunice. You told us we could manage your account." The room went silent. Even the football game on TV seemed to hush. You could feel every eye turn on him. I let the recording roll, him talking about assisted living. Jacksonville. We already toured a place. Nobody could say it was edited. It was his voice, his words. Miranda's face went red, not with shame, but embarrassment. In the South, pride burns hotter than guilt. One of Grant's cousins muttered, "Man, that's cold." And the whole table shifted, people leaning away from him like dishonor might rub off. Laurel whispered, "Grant." Her voice cracked like thin ice. I turned to Miranda. "Your son emptied my safe and forged my name on legal papers. You still proud?" Grant slammed his hand on the table. "She's twisting it. She's been slipping for months. We're trying to help her." I stepped closer. "Then tell everyone here why my signature appears on a form I never signed." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just air. That silence hit harder than any shout. I looked around the room and said, calm and clear, "I have already spoken with my lawyer. Any further access to my property or accounts will be treated as criminal." And then I did something no Southern woman does. I turned my back on company and walked out of my own dining room. Behind me, the noise stayed quiet, shame filling every corner. In my bedroom, I locked the door, laid out the papers, and called Howard. "It's time," I said. "No more family business. We're going public." 2 days after Thanksgiving, I was sweeping my porch like I'd done every Friday for 30 years when a white sedan stopped in front of my house. A man in a tan jacket stepped out and said, "Ma'am, are you Miss Eunice Caldwin?" I said yes, and he handed me an envelope thick enough to make my heart dip. "You've been served," he said, then walked off before I could ask what for. Inside, the paper crackled like it had a pulse. The seal said Chatham County Probate Court. The title read, "Petition for Temporary Guardianship, Emergency Oversight." I read the words twice, each one colder than the next. Cognitive decline, confusion about finances, vulnerability to self-harm through mismanagement. That was a lawyer's way of saying I'd lost my mind. I told the audience, that's how they do it. Rewrite your life in legal grammar. They said I misplaced valuables, forgot conversations, verbally agreed to let them help. No proof, no witness, just their word. Seeing my own name printed like I was a patient instead of a person didn't make me mad. It made me still. Cold is worse than angry. Cold means I'm calculating. I sat down in Thomas's old recliner and read every line. I underlined phrases, wrote notes in the margins. "Ladies," I said softly, "if you can read a recipe card, you can read a legal form. Don't let anybody tell you you're too old to understand what's got your name on it." The petition called Grant and Laurel primary caregivers. I circled that lie 3 times. They don't live here. I do. It named Laurel as supporting witness. That one hurt deep, but pain wasn't going to fix it. I folded the papers, slid them in my purse, and drove myself downtown. My hands didn't shake on the steering wheel. The air smelled like salt and gumbo from the market. When I pulled up at Howard Lendrix's office, he was already waiting. Sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp. "Let me see what that fool cooked up," he said. He read the petition, sighed, then looked at me. "If this gets approved, he can move you anywhere he wants, access all your accounts, for your safety. We're not letting that happen." "What do we do?" I asked, not panicked, just ready. "We stop the emergency by proving you're competent. Doctor's evaluation, witness statements, documentation." I nodded. "Then let's start." Howard called Dr. McCready, an old Savannah physician who's been fighting elder exploitation cases since the 80s. I agreed to every test. "When you know the truth," I said, "you don't hide from proof." The next morning, I showed up to that clinic in my navy blazer and Sunday shoes. Presentation matters in the South. People decide sanity by posture and lipstick. The doctor ran tests: memory, recall, teeny math, reasoning, orientation. I answered every question crisp and calm. At the end, he said, "Ms. Caldwin, you're as sharp as they come." I'll put that in writing today. When I walked back into Howard's office with that signed evaluation in hand, he smiled for the first time all week. "Now," he said, "we don't just block him, we hit him." I sat down across from him. "You mean file back?" He nodded. "With evidence of forgery, financial control, and psychological manipulation. Are you ready to swear it under oath?" I leaned forward and said, "Howard, I've spent 70 years putting other people first. It's time I put my name first." The courthouse smelled like lemon cleaner and nerves. I'd been there before, back when Thomas worked veteran benefit cases, but never on this side of the aisle. I arrived early with Howard, dressed in charcoal gray, pearls neat at my neck. My papers were organized by tabs and dates. Across the hall, Grant leaned against the wall, arms folded, face smug. Laurel sat beside him, pale, eyes down, clutching her purse like a lifeline. He nodded at me like he'd already won. Howard leaned close. "Let him talk himself into a hole," he whispered. I smiled just enough for him to see. He's been digging for months. When the clerk called Caldwin versus Penmar, the courtroom grew smaller somehow. Judge Beverly Stroud, mid-50s, sharp-eyed, calm as Sunday morning, took her seat. She looked like she'd seen every kind of fool in her career. "Let's proceed," she said. Grant stood, voice smooth as syrup. "Your Honor, this is not about control. It's about safety. My mother-in-law has shown confusion, misplacing valuables, forgetting bills. We've stepped up to help her manage." He looked right at me, pretending concern. "We're just trying to protect her before something tragic happens." I could hear the older women in the audience shift in their seats. They knew that tone, that fake tenderness men use when they think they're smarter than you. Judge Stroud tilted her head. "And what proof do you have, Mr. Penmar?" Grant lifted a folder thick with papers, mostly copies of his own lies, and smiled. Laurel's eyes flickered, guilt flashing through. Howard rose. "Your Honor, we'll answer those claims after his statement." I sat still, calm, not quiet, because quiet means fear. Calm means control. Then it was my turn. Howard guided me gently. Ms. Caldwin, how do you handle your finances? I spoke clearly. I manage my checking, saving, and retirement independently. I track withdrawals, review statements, and pay my bills online. I've been balancing accounts longer than he's been alive. A small laugh rippled through the room. Howard nodded. And did you ever authorize anyone to move your funds or sign your name? I looked right at Grant. No, ma'am. I have never signed away my life. Howard pressed a button on his laptop. My kitchen recording played. Grant's voice filled the courtroom, smooth, arrogant, undeniable. You said we could manage your account, Miss Eunice. You told us we could... The judge stopped writing. Every eye turned to him. He shifted, sweat beading on his forehead. Howard said softly, "That's his voice. Your Honor." When the audio ended, the silence was heavy enough to hear the hum of the ceiling vent. Judge Stroud studied me for a moment, then asked, "Mrs. Caldwin, did your husband work with the Veterans Administration in the 80s? Yes, Your Honor. Thomas Caldwin." Her expression softened. "He helped me file my first federal claim. I remember that man." Grant's smirk cracked. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Penmar, you should be ashamed. This isn't caregiving. It's coercion." She turned back to me. "Mrs. Caldwin, your competency is not in question. This petition is dismissed with prejudice." Grant shot up. "She's manipulating the system." The gavel hit wood like thunder. "Enough. I'll be forwarding this file for fraud review." Laurel started to cry quietly, shoulders trembling. I looked at her once. No hate, no comfort. Some lessons grow only in silence. Outside the courthouse, Howard said, "He's not done. Next, he'll go for your reputation." I adjusted my coat, breathing the winter air. Then he can meet the truth in public, too. Reporters waited by the steps. Cameras ready. I walked past them, chin high. He tried to call me crazy, I told myself. Now he'll learn what sane looks like. The house was still when I got home from court. Not quiet like peace. Quiet like the air after thunder. I walked from room to room, feeling every space differently now. The dining room still had those folding chairs from Thanksgiving stacked in the corner, ghosts of a dinner that turned into war. The safe sat in my bedroom, heavy and humming with memory. I opened it just to touch my grandmother's pearls. Not vanity. Claiming. I whispered, "You're home. You're still home." Winning didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion dressed up as relief. That night, headlights flashed through my window, Laurel's car. She sat there a long time, engine off, hands tight on the wheel. I watched from behind the curtain, telling myself, "That's my baby, but I'm not opening that door with my heart first this time." When I finally stepped onto the porch, I didn't move closer. I stayed in my doorway, the line drawn. Laurel got out, no ring on her hand, face swollen from crying. "Mama," she said, voice trembling. "Can we talk?" She started with excuses. I didn't know he'd take it that far. I stopped her, calm. "Baby, don't start with 'I didn't know.' You signed it." She broke down right there, hands shaking. "He told me you wouldn't be safe by yourself. And you believed him more than you believed me." That sentence landed like a brick. Her face crumpled. I didn't hug her. I folded my arms. There comes a point where mercy becomes enabling. I hit that point. She tried again. "He said you were slipping, leaving burners on, misplacing checks," I said, "and you didn't come ask me yourself. You just started planning where to put me." Her silence was confession. I pressed on. "Did you tell folks I was confused? Did you let his mama stand in my dining room and talk about me like I was already gone?" Laurel nodded, eyes wet. "I didn't fight her." "That hurt worse than the theft," I said. "You let them erase me in front of people who know me. That's not gossip, that's erasure." She whispered, "I didn't stand up for you." "No," I said softly. "You stood next to him." I went inside, came back with a folder. "We're not just talking feelings. We're talking what's owed." I handed her the papers, Howard's breakdown of every dollar to ring, and document touched without consent. Laurel looked at the total and gasped. "He told me it wasn't that much." "He lies smooth," I said. "Doesn't make your name clean." She flinched, reading the repayment terms. "Mama, please don't let him go to jail. I can't go through that." "This ain't about him," I said. "This is about protecting me." "Finally," she whispered. "I'm sorry. Mama, I was wrong." I touched her hand once. "I accept your apology. I don't trust you yet." Sunday came quiet and bright. I wore my pearls to church. Women whispered, "You all right, Miss Caldwin?" I smiled, nodding. Reverend preached on honoring elders while they can still hear it. I sat there and felt my shame lift. That evening, I signed the restitution forms and filed them in a folder labeled Penmar. I said out loud, "I'm not scared, I'm organized." Then I locked my front door, not from fear, but from choice. "My name is Eunice Caldwin," I said into the empty kitchen. "I'm still here. I'm not for sale." Morning light poured across my kitchen table, the same table I'd sat at for 30 years. I poured coffee into my old chipped mug and slipped on my pearls. They weren't for fashion, they were armor. I told myself, you don't walk into a negotiation looking like you lost sleep. 3 folders sat in front of me. House, financial, medical. That was my life laid out in paper, not pity. When you're an older woman, people think you're just memories and casseroles. Paper makes it real. I took a deep breath and whispered, "No tears today. No begging. Just business." Howard's office smelled like pine cleaner and old victories. The blinds were half drawn, sunlight striping across his desk. He sat beside me. Not across. That mattered. Grant walked in first, looking smaller than I remembered, his shirt wrinkled, his face pale. Laurel followed, keeping distance between them. No wedding ring, no shared glance. The crack had widened. Howard began, voice firm. "Let the record show that Mrs. Eunice Caldwin is present, of sound mind, and in full control of her affairs." He said it like gospel. Grant twitched, trying to act unbothered. "We just want to make sure she's stable," he said. I laughed. One dry note. "Baby, I raised you through a foreclosure and a hurricane. I'm stable." Laurel's head dropped. She knew I wasn't joking. Howard slid the agreement forward. "These are the terms." I watched Grant's eyes flick across each line. Restitution, admission, no contact, prosecution clause. Every word was deliberate. "You accessed Mrs. Caldwin's property without consent. You misrepresented her condition. You agree to repay and refrain from contact unless invited in writing." Grant's lip curled. "You can't be serious." Howard leaned back. "You sign now, or I file fraud charges before lunch." Grant hesitated, then scribbled his name like a man trying to swallow fire. I looked at him and thought, "You didn't lose me. You lost access." When it was done, Laurel spoke softly. "Mama, what about me?" I met her eyes. "You're my daughter." That won't change. But you don't have keys to this house, and you don't speak for me. You'll have to earn back trust, not expect it." She nodded, tears falling. "I will. However long it takes." "That's the first grown thing I've heard you say in months," I said. My voice wasn't cruel, just true. Love doesn't vanish, but it doesn't excuse either, Grant mumbled as they turned to leave. "You didn't have to go this far." I stopped him. "You walked into my home, opened my safe, and tried to erase me while I was still breathing. Where I come from, that's not family, that's theft. You're lucky all you're walking out with is a payment plan." He didn't look back. That evening, I rehung the wedding photo of me and Thomas in the hallway, where it belonged. I used to think legacy was what you leave behind. Now I know sometimes it's what you keep. I sat in his recliner, the house still and safe. To those watching, I'd say, if someone tells you you're too old to need what you worked for, you tell them, "I earned it." You didn't. Get your hands off my life. I locked the safe, slipped the new combination into my bra. Old habits that never failed. "They thought I was something they could move around," I whispered. "But I'm the foundation. You don't move the foundation. You stand on it. Or you get out of my house." The night settled over Savannah like a secret. I sat by the window, the streetlights painting gold lines across my floor. The phone buzzed once, an unknown number, no voicemail. I stared at it, uneasy. Maybe peace isn't the end. Maybe it's just the next test waiting to knock.